Hey, welcome back to Relax Radio with me, Nick, keeping you guys company all the way until 5 p.m. Yeah, we're trying to keep it real. We're trying to keep it 100% right here on Relax Radio. It's RELAKS, without the X, because we believe in positivity. And we were talking about all these things, earlier, and how, the COVID passports and how people have been, against. A lot of people have been against it, and they're not quite, 100% on board with it. I mean, it is understandable, with the risks that they believe, and, the rights that they might be losing. These are just some of the things that, these passport holders, the whole possibility of this passport, and why people are hesitant to even have it. So, the vaccines minister Nadeem Zahawi said it would be remiss of the government not to consider COVID certification as a way of fully reopening the economy. So amid a lot of these criticisms of the plan, Mr. Zahawi did say, that it's only right that we look at all these options that are available to us to take our lives back. So the government said, these certificates showing vaccination tests or immunity status could provide a reassurance. So their argument is essentially, when you have these kind of things in this information, it'll make it easier for, especially when you travel or when you go out to bars or pubs. What they're trying to say is, hey, once you go into these places, you can just show this as a verification to show that, hey, I don't have corona on me. I'm not going to be spreading it. So I'm totally completely safe and okay to be around other people. And the whole point is to beat the transmissibility of the virus. So this is one of the reasons why, they want to go through with this. But, Boris Johnson also said that they could help a person who is not contagious. It could signal, a help for a person who's just not contagious. And there's a recently, Mr. Boris Johnson, he went to visit a site for AstraZeneca factory, and he said, that these COVID certificates, also referred to as passports, would not be rolled out until well after indoor hospitality reopens from the 17th of May. So Scotland's First Minister Nicola Sturgeon said she was open-minded about using certificates to allow certain activities to resume, and called for an open debate. But many MPs have criticized the plans, with senior Tory backbenchers Mark Harper warning it could lead to a two-tier Britain, demanding a vote on this issue. So essentially, Mr. Zahawi was keen to point out, though, that the concept of using these COVID certificates to allow international travel was distinct from a review of using them within the UK. So essentially what he's trying to say is, this concept of using these certificates, it's basically, it'll be even more helpful when, we want to travel abroad internationally, you want to travel to other countries, other places across the globe. It's just going to be even more useful. That is what they're saying. But, he further states that I think it would be remiss and irresponsible for us to not look at all these things. And he just stressed, that they would not be headed for the reopening of outdoor hospitality or non-essential retail on the 12th of April, or indoor hospitality from the 17th of May. So Mr. Zahawi said, the use of these certificates domestically does raise a number of ethical issues. Well, we'll go on with that. So basically what the government's scientific advisors have warned, that indoor mixing later in the year would be very highly, likely to lead to a resurgence in hospitalizations and deaths. So Mr. Zahawi said the prediction by the SPIM, a group that feeds into the government's scientific advisory group, the SAGE, was why, England's roadmap out of lockdown had 5-week intervals. So essentially the whole point is, to get it down and reduce. So essentially, once you get more people vaccinated, the likelihood of getting reinfected again is really low. The probability is really low. So this is just some of the reasons why they are coming to these kind of approaches. So the UK government said it was working with the developed administrations in Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland to seek a consistent approach. So Mr. Johnson, he's been saying that the power to set public health regulations for England, but he says that it is a devolved power in the other UK nations. So he just trying to remind us that he has a lot of he has influence, he says, of the public health regulations in England, but outside of when it comes to the other UK nations, it's not as much as he would like. So the government review is currently being carried out to see how certificates that show testing status could work in England, and they are going to be trialed at upcoming events, including the FA Cup the final at Wembley Stadium. So yeah, that's just some of the places that they are wondering, whether they're going to initiate it, because like I said, especially for these big events, these concerts, it's very vital to not be able to transmit the disease. And this, one of these ways could be, the future could be the COVID passports, to make sure that the spread is restricted. So yeah, series of these trials, including comedy nights and a large nightclub events, are also planned in Liverpool to see whether requiring participants to have a negative test can allow big indoor gatherings to be held more safely. But no decisions has yet been made on whether COVID status certificates will be introduced. But the government has now published an update on its review, and it said, they could play a role in allowing people to return to theaters and nightclubs and mass events like festivals, and maybe allow social distancing to be relaxed in hospitality venues. So that's just something that they are trying to approach right now, and they're discussing. The government is discussing the way they're weighing in their options of what they can do as time goes by, as the lockdown relaxes. This is just some of the things that they are considering. So one of the things also is, like I said, the COVID passport is just it's shining right now for the government, in the government's eyes. But then, like I said, there's been a lot of these issues and ethical issues that is popping up actually. So there's also a saying though, that they say that the UK seems to be in a strong position. So the vaccine rollout is going really well. The infection levels, hospitalizations, and deaths are at an all-time low right now. So yeah, but modeling done for the government suggests once all restrictions are lifted, the country could be heading for a devastating resurgence in the virus, similar to that seen back in January. So how can this be? First of all, these models, what I'm talking about, these models are essentially not a prediction. They are just an example of what could happen under certain assumptions, including how many who do not, take up the offer of the vaccines, and how much vaccines stop infections, and how seriousness of the illness, and how much people mix with each other. So that's just some of the things. And the idea of returning to January levels of death is it's terrible. I mean, it's the most dark part of this whole model, and it comes with a lot of huge caveats. So basically, a more optimistic scenario is that deaths are no higher than a bad flu season. So that's the aim. The aim is to keep it at that low, so not as much as people, get transmitted with this disease. And one of these things that they're trying to do is, like I said, it is got to do with the COVID vaccine. So getting more people vaccinated lowers the likelihood of, contracting the disease. But the problem the decision makers face is that there are so many unknowns, and it is very easy to find yourself playing catch up. Well, working out what is a proportionate response is also the main key for the government. So yeah, recent poll of more than 8,000 UK adults suggested there was strong public support for the use of these vaccine passports in certain situations. So more than 3/4, which is 78% of those surveyed, supported their use for international travel and care home visits, while 74% supported them for visiting relatives in hospital, and 68% to attend the theater. But the opposition, to these COVID passports being used within the UK has mounted, with a group of more than 70 cross-party MPs criticizing the plan last week. So yeah, they're demanding, medical proof in order to take part. They say, essentially what they're trying to say is, when the government demands for us to show some kind of medical proof, in order to take part in these local community life, for example, going to venues or visiting pubs, or is just discriminatory and divisive. So yeah, they're saying it's basically creating a rift amongst the public. It's causing division, and it's very discriminatory. So that's just some of the things that a lot of these critics are talking about. And it is fair point that if you really think about it, yeah, a lot of people will be especially when you come back down to it, people think about, hey, it's been a year since I came out of my house. And then all of a sudden, the government is asking me now to take these tests, and I'm supposed to show this certificate anywhere and everywhere I go. I mean, it is going to be a handful. And a lot of people have actually not so much, the faith in the vaccine is not yet 100%. So a lot of people are still hesitant. And the other thing is, it's inconvenience for a lot of people. They say, hey, this is just another hassle for us. So that's just some of the things why they are not that's why they're very reluctant. So yeah, And Mark Harper, though, who chairs the COVID recovery group of conservatives MPs, which is against the lockdown restrictions, said it was not acceptable for the end of social distancing to depend on these certificates. So he said it was crucial that MPs are allowed to vote on the issue, and that they're trying to introduce these domestic vaccine passports by the back door by linking them to removing social distancing rules. And it's just won't be acceptable either. So this is just some of the things, that he is talking about. And he says a lot of these things. And Mr. Zahawi said MPs would be absolutely be offered a vote on the COVID certification. And they're talking about it. And there's been a lot of, like I said, backlash from the government, backlash from some of the conservative party, backlash from the public as well, who are not quite happy with this. But the government certificate review is not expected to be finalized until the summer. So there's still time until they come to a conclusive answer. So you guys can keep it chill until then. But hopefully by that time, most of the adults rather would be at least vaccinated, and that is something to look forward to. And with that, though, we are gonna be taking a quick break and checking your time right now. Though it is 3:15. Good afternoon.